This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can visit their store by using my referral link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Nitsahone, and it's Friday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. I've made almost 400 of these, and one of my goals with them is to eventually cover every single color combination. I've already done all the 2-color combinations and several wedges and shards, and even 5-color cards, but there are still some 3-color combinations I haven't done, and Bant is one of them. The Bant color combination is green, white, and blue, and it gets its name from the Bant shard from a Lara block. To be eligible for this list, a card had to have a Bant color identity, and that means that it had to have the green, white, and blue mana symbol appear somewhere on the card with no other colored mana symbols. This means a card has Bant identity if it simply costs the 3 Bant colors, but a card that is mono green and has an ability that costs a blue and a white would also qualify. In all, there are 54 cards with a Bant color identity, and in this video we'll look at the 10 that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. Before we get started, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A top 8 at a Pro Tour, Players Tour, Mythic Championship, Mythic Invitational, Legacy, or Vintage Championship is worth 2 points, and a top 8 at a Magic Festa Grand Prix is worth 1 point. At number 10, it is Feldegriff. This card is a wacky one, and it has a really neat design. The wackiness even extends to the name of the card and its creature type of Feldegriff. It's an anagram of Garfield, PhD, referring to Richard Garfield, the creator of Magic the Gathering. The design here is fun because you get a 4-mana 4/4 with all kinds of abilities that make it better until end of turn, but you also have to give your opponent something in the process. One might not think that these abilities would be useful in a competitive environment, even if they are a lot of fun in EDH. However, there was once a time when someone found a use for Feldegriff at Magic's highest level of competition. At Worlds in 1999, the Feldegriff made it into an Oath of Druids deck. These decks seek to utilize Oath of Druids to win the game. This usually involves searching up a couple of creatures who can combo off and win you the game, like Spike Feeder and Triskelion. Feldegriff fits in here because you need a plan against opponents who know you're playing Oath of Druids and won't play creatures against you, so you can never really trigger your Oath. So, you can use the Feldegriff to give your opponent creatures, enabling the Oath and letting you combo off. While Oath of Druids decks have gone on to be significant in Magic's history since then, this was the only time Feldegriff was used. And as a result, Feldegriff doesn't have any points since 1999. At number 9, it is Finest Hour. Exalted was Bant's mechanic in a Lara block, and it gave a creature +1/+1 if it attacked alone. Finest Hour adds an additional bonus to lone creatures attacking, also allowing an additional combat phase. This is pretty neat because you can attack with one thing the first time, and if you have other creatures, you can just attack all in the second combat. It was played in Bant aggro decks in Standard. At number 8, it is Beck and Call, a split card that has a Bant identity. It has the same number of total points as Finest Hour, but has more Pro Tour top 8, so I gave it the higher spot on this list. The Beck side makes it so you draw a card anytime a creature enters the battlefield until end of turn, and the Call side makes 4 1/1 bird tokens. This is a split card with Fuse, so you can actually pay for the whole thing and get both effects, which means you would pay 8 total mana for 4 1/1 birds and 4 cards, which is a pretty nice deal. Beck and Call has been played in Legacy Elf decks, which seek to play a bunch of creatures in a single turn while ripping through their library. This is typically accomplished with Glimpse of Nature, but the Beck side of Beck and Call makes the deck a little more consistent, as you have an alternate version of the effect in Beck. It isn't a staple in Legacy Elves though, and doesn't have any points since 2013. At number 7, it is Wargate. This Bant X spell lets you tutor up any permanent in your deck and stick it directly on the battlefield. Obviously, X+3 usually means you aren't going to get a good deal on that permanent, but this provides some pretty impressive flexibility. It gained all of its points in Scapeshift decks in Extended, which sought to win the game utilizing Scapeshift and Valakut the Molten Pinnacle. Prismatic Omen was also used in this version of the deck to make lethal even easier to obtain with Scapeshift and Valakut, since it now meant that all your lands were mountains. Wargate fit in nicely there, as it could be used to tutor up any land, including Valakut, as well as the Omen, making the deck significantly more consistent. However, when Extended ended, modern versions of Scapeshift did not utilize the Wargate plan, and it doesn't have any points since 2011. At number 6, it is Imperial Archangel. This Bant Angel costs a whopping 8 mana, but she is pretty impressive. She of course has flying, but she also has Shroud, making it very difficult for anyone to interact with her, and she also redirects all damage dealt to you to herself. and with 8 toughness, that means your opponent is going to need to do a whole lot of damage in a single turn to take her down. Her massive mana cost kept her from seeing play in block standard or extended. However, she did find significant success in Legacy, a format that can more easily cheat her into play. She's gained all of her points there in Reanimator decks, which can easily load up the graveyard and get the Archangel back incredibly early as turn 2 with the Reanimator spells available there. She hasn't gone on to be a consistent player in Legacy Reanimator decks though, and doesn't have any points since 2014. At number 5, it is Rafik of the Mini. In the lore, he's the greatest warrior on the plane of Bant, and the card does a pretty nice job of reflecting that. He's another Bant card that not only has Exalted, but comes with another bonus for lone attackers, and that's that he gives them double strike. That of course includes himself, and means all on his own, he can attack as a 4/4 with double strike, which is pretty scary. He was played in Bant aggro decks while he was in Standard, and he doesn't have any points since he rotated. At number 4, it is Bant Charm. It's a tradition in Magic to give multicolored factions modal cards, and in Alara block, they got charms, which means you got to choose one of 3 options. In this case, you can blow up an artifact, put a creature on the bottom of a library, or counter an instant spell. Individually, you're definitely overpaying for these effects, but the flexibility of charms is powerful. The most common mode you're probably going to choose is the one that gets rid of a creature, but being able to run a removal spell that also has the upside of dealing with artifacts or countering instants is pretty nice. In Standard, Extended, and Legacy, it was played in Bant aggro decks. It also gained points in Extended Zoo, which splashed blue for the ability to play the charm. It has a single Pro Tour top 8 that came in a modern Zoo deck too. It doesn't gain any points since 2012. At number 3, it is Rock's War Monk, which is a pretty simple card as a 3-mana 3/4 with lifelink. That's a really nice stat line and keyword for the cost, though one does have to have one of each Bant color to cast it. However, that wasn't really a problem in Standard, where mana was pretty good, and certainly not a problem in other formats, where mana is excellent. As a result, it was played in Bant aggro decks in Standard, Extended, Modern, and Legacy, which can actually get it down as early as turn 2, with the help of a card we'll see higher up on this list. The Monk also played pretty well with Exalted, as he could give you even more life when he attacked alone. It doesn't have any points since 2011. At number 2, it is Tamiyo, Field Researcher, a Bant Planeswalker. Her +1 allows her to make it so that 2 of your creatures have the ability to draw you a card when they deal damage, all the way until your next turn. Notably, this effect does not say combat damage to a player like most versions of this effect. This means if you attack with any creature she targeted with that +1, she's likely to draw you cards, since if your opponent doesn't have a removal spell, your creatures will do damage one way or another. You can also just keep the creatures back and plan on chumping with them to protect Tamiyo, at which point you still get to draw cards. She also came with a -2 that locks down a couple of non-land permanents until your next turn, which can really alter the state of the game. And of course, she has a game-breaking ultimate which draws you 3 cards and makes it so you can just play spells from your hand for free for the rest of the game. She gained all of her points in Standard. Her 2 main homes there were Bant Collected Company decks and Copycat Combo decks. She hasn't gained any points since rotating out of Standard. And at number 1, by a whole lot, and probably not surprising anyone, especially because I dropped a hint about it earlier, it is Noble Hierarch. Like a lot of cards on this list, she comes with Exalted, but more importantly, she's also a great mana dork, and has a reasonable claim to being the best one in the game these days, even beating out the iconic Birds of Paradise. While she can't tap for any color, tapping for 3 different colors is pretty great, and the fact that she has Exalted means that she can actually attack as a 1/2, in addition to the fact that she can pump up any other creature you choose to attack alone with. The Hierarch just does so much for only 1 mana. While it was of course heavily played in Standard, it has continued to see a ton of play in both Modern and Legacy. In Modern, it's pretty much the mana dork of choice, giving it an absolutely massive score in the format. It's been a key card in decks like Birthing Pod, Humans, and Infect. It is particularly nice in Infect, as those decks often attack with a lone Infect creature anyway, so in addition to getting some extra mana to work with, she also helps your Infect creatures hit your opponent harder. She also sees play in Legacy Infect. Noble Hierarch is going to continue to gain points going forward, and is likely to be the number 1 Bant card for the rest of time. Well, that does it for this MTG Top 10. If you want to own any of these Bant cards, in the description you'll find a direct link to the Card Kingdom store for each of them. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future MTG Top 10s, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. If you want to see more of the MTG Top 10s I've already made, including several more on the various color combinations, you should see some playlists on your screen shortly. Lastly, if you enjoy my content here, consider subscribing to my other YouTube channel, Need to Hone History, where I talk about real-world history. Thanks for watching.